Good morning, an early morning for some folks on the West Coast, including a few on this panel. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen. I'm one of the organizers of Land of Hope and Dreams, a celebration of Dave Marsh's work and vision. We're so thrilled to have you all here. We're so thrilled to be doing this. We've been working on this for, over a year now. And to see it finally come to fruition has been a pretty amazing thing. Most people know Dave Marsh primarily as a music journalist, rock critic, radio host, but he's a lot more than that. Just like all of us are more than what we might appear if you just look at our resumes or what we're known for. And Dave has been known for, among other things, building bridges between audience and performer, between music and politics. He's been a champion of social justice. And if there's one thing that he's about, it's about building community. Anyone who's had a chance to meet him knows how great he is at that. And before we move on, I just have a few housekeeping notes. I got to thank my fellow organizers. This has been incredible. Danny Alexander, Chris Buhalis, Charles Hughes, Sue Martinez, Lauren Anke, Alexander Shashko, Craig Warner, and Daniel Wolf. Karen Rose has also been helping with the social media, getting the word out. And David Cantwell, even when he wasn't in on the organizing committee's meetings, his voice was always part of the discussion. So thank you all for bringing together what everyone is seeing on screen. I'd also like to thank our partners, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the University of Wisconsin Afro-American Studies Department. They both helped promote this event, and the Rock Hall will also be streaming on their YouTube channel the spotlight discussion between Daniel Wolf and Dave Marsh on Friday, May 14th. All of these conversations are being simulcast on our YouTube channel as well, the Land of Hope and Dreams YouTube channel, and will be archived there and on the Land of Hope and Dreams website. In terms of how the Zoom is going to work, we have disabled the chat, but the Q&A tab is open. So at the bottom of your screen, if you click on Q&A and you want to ask a question, you can ask it there. You can raise your hand, but we'll still need you to put all your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom. And then once the discussion is over, we'll pass things back to Danny Alexander, who will relay questions from the audience. I'd also like to point out that we are closed captioning or subtitling these sessions. And if you want to turn the subtitles off for yourself, you can go to the bottom of your Zoom screen. It should say live transcript CC, and there's a little arrow there pointing up. Click on that arrow and click hide subtitles, and they'll be out of the way for you. Finally, we are so happy that we can bring all of this to you for free. If you do feel like it's something that you want to throw in a few bucks for, or even if you hate it and want to throw in a few bucks, there's really not a better way to do that than donating to the Kristen Ann Carr Fund. The Kristen Ann Carr Fund is a foundation that Dave Marsh and his wife Barbara Carr set up in honor of their late daughter Kristen almost 30 years ago. Kristen passed away from a rare sarcoma, a type of cancer, and the Kristen Ann Carr Fund raises money for sarcoma research and to fund sarcoma fellows who go across the country to places that are underserved by such specialists and make sure people with sarcomas can get the medical care that they need. So again, if you want to donate to the Kristen Ann Carr Fund, there's a link on the Land of Hope and Dreams website, and I'll try to put a link in the chat as well. So that said, no discussion about Dave Marsh or Dave Marsh and community would be complete without some music. And we've got a great one this morning. We have got a performance from Michael Fracasso, one of the great Austin singer-songwriters, and we're going to play that for you now.
I first met Dave Marsh during South by Southwest in around '99 or so. And my friend Greg Johnson had brought him to see me play. And one of the songs I did that night is a song called Hospital. And I had no idea about Dave's daughter or anything like that, but apparently it had touched him, and I'd like to dedicate this song to him. Don't ask me about the ever after. I'm living in the here and now, a tad lonely going on to next to nothing, and presently it's day to day. Tried praying, but it got no better. I tried writing, but I got no letter. Came no letter. Doing the best I can. Oh, the hospital, smell of clean white danger. Now I'm sitting here talking to a stranger. A man thumbing through a book of pictures from long ago. I don't know why she's laughing and doing better. Things happen then in sunny weather. Doing better, doing the best I can.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Hughes. I'm a writer and a teacher, originally from Wisconsin, now based in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm a member of the organizing committee for this incredible conference, and it's so great to be with you all today. I just want to briefly introduce the conversation that you're about to hear. I won't go on too long because I know no one's here to listen to me, but I did just want to say a couple things. First of all, I hope that all of you out there, wherever you are in the Zoomiverse, will give a round of applause and give it up for Eric Schumacher Rasmussen, who has done such crucial work in making this conference happen and work and be as successful as it is. He deserves all the special mention that we can give him. So thank you once again, Eric. I also wanted to briefly acknowledge the passing of Lloyd Price, such an important figure in one of the connected stories that we're telling here, and someone who Dave Marsh has written about, including in Heart of Rock and Soul, in which two of Lloyd Price's recordings made the list. Stagger Lee at number 230, in which, among other things, Dave Marsh reminds us that on that record, Price helped create, quote, one of the most indelible openings any rock and roll record has ever had. And number 460, Lottie Miss Claudie, which Dave Marsh reminds us, quote, set the pattern for the rock and roll years in New Orleans. So all honor and praises to Mr. Price. The idea of a panel on music and community within this conference might seem a bit redundant, especially when we are celebrating the work and vision of Dave Marsh, because as Dave Marsh reminds us, and as all of his collaborators know, these two are deeply linked to the point of being synonymous. Music is community. Music creates community. It reflects community. It insists on community, and it helps remix our very definitions of what community is and can be. So in a sense, everything that we're doing here, as Eric suggested at the beginning, every conversation that we're having here at Land of Hope and Dreams is about music and community. But this conversation, nonetheless, is an essential and unique opportunity to dig deeply into some of the deepest questions that underlie that project and that process. Why it happens, how it happens, their urgency in both past and present, and what our roles are in ensuring the creation and the sustenance of those communities that for Dave Marsh and the people around him are so central and so crucial. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation here with this esteemed and illustrious panel. To lead us, we have Peyton Wimmer. I'm not going to read Peyton's full biography. It's available on the conference website, So go check that out. But I did just want to mention a couple brief things. A serial social entrepreneur, Peyton Wimmer has worked for 25 plus years in the music, art, and startup community in Austin, Texas, where he lives. As founding director of the Sims Foundation in 1995, Peyton created the industry-leading programs and service model that brought health and stability to one of Austin's most visible resources, the music community, with particularly crucial attention paid to mental health and drug addiction. Wimmer's foundational work has considered with Medicino, the Austin Musicians Clinic, and the Austin Art and Music Partnership. He is also a widely regarded speaker, mentor, and consultant with everyone from music hairs to the armed services. Please welcome to lead our conversation this morning, Peyton Wimmer.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. I think it is an esteemed panel of saints and sinners. We've got a little bit of everything, and we cover different aspects of the music community. But we do have common grounds that we start from, and like you said with Dave, Dave was, he exists in that common ground so much of the time. In fact, Dave and I met. I was sitting in the hotel down at the Four Seasons, getting ready to accept a donation from KGSR, and I was just sitting up next to the bar, and Dave came in, sat down next to him, and I tell you, for those of y'all who know me, I am a walking idiot. I have my slice of life that I know what I'm doing, which is really small. The rest of the time, I got nothing. And so I didn't know who Dave was in the world at large. I did know basically one thing about him that I really liked. So I look at him, but this another musician in town came up to him and just started kind of fawning on Dave, which, as many of y'all know, is not really the best move, just telling Dave how great he was and whatever. And he left and he grunted. Dave kind of like, eh. And I looked at him and said, yeah, I don't know about all that, but here's what I know. Every year I come to South by Southwest, and the one thing I can depend on is there's going to be somebody on a panel saying something that they shouldn't say, and you're going to stand up in the audience and rip them a new one. I said, I live for it every year. This year's was exceptional, fantastic. And we laughed, and then he called me the next year and said, hey, Peyton, it's Dave. I've got a panel coming up at South by on No More Benefits. I'd like for you to work with me on this. And it's like, holy cow. I didn't know Dave knew who I was. I knew who he was by that time. And so that's really where I started learning about Dave, but understanding, the common ground was, and I think many of us on the panel would kind of agree, and musicians that I know, without the passion, we're kind of hollow shells. And each of us, kind of have found our niche, or found our song, or found our purpose, our mission, that fills up this hollow shell, or at least carries this passion and lets us apply it to the world in one way or the other. And building community is what I've ended up doing for the last 25 years. So I'll introduce a little bit about me, that process, frame up the conversation a little bit within Dave's work, and something Dave brought to me about the Highlander Folk School and the great song, We Shall Overcome, and kind of frame our conversation today within that, because each of us could talk about our mission and our passion for days. But we're going to try to pour it through that door in tribute to not Dave himself. I think Dave would say, he wants to highlight the mission, but not, or highlight the story, but not be the story. And, so it's kind of in honor of the common ground we stand on with Dave, and what he's meant to my work here and everybody else's. And then I'll introduce everybody and hear something about their project, so that you guys in the listening and watching can get a glimpse at the spark and the passion that is driving these guys on this common ground. That said, so, I for myself, I didn't really intend to be here as far as 25 years looking back. And I've been an activist and a community builder and in the nonprofit world, frankly. And I think Greg Johnson will be able to back me up on this. Some of us, I never really thought I was supposed to be the adult in the room, to start with. And when I ended up the way the Sims Foundation came about, which is mental health services here in the music community in Austin, I had just finished getting a degree in counseling. It was going to prop up my day job status while I was trying to, find a way as a musician and writer. And I was buying some guitar strings. A friend of mine, Brent Wilson at South Austin Music, said, now that you got your degree, who do you want to counsel? And I said, man, if I could tie into the music community, it'd be job security. And we're all kind of crazy just trying to make a living at music to start with, and just working with metaphors. It's what I do. It'd be fantastic. Kind of a joke, throw off, one of those one-off. Next morning in the paper, Michael Corcoran said, after the death of Sims Ellison, who passed away here, and now 25 years ago, from suicide, Michael said, wouldn't it be a good idea if there's a therapist that's also a musician, we could start some kind of services? And I called to my wife, Karen, honey, everything but my name's in the paper today. It looks like one of those careful what you ask for columns. And that was it. That was kind of got me started. I will say, at the point where I fully sat down with his family, with the people that had worked with Sims, they were starting, and it started the nucleus of what became the Sims Foundation. But when I got there, I went through Michael, got there, and I said, they said, well, it's a big job. And I looked up and I said, for the first time in my life, I know what to do today, tomorrow, and in 10 years. I could see that vision. A lot of things I didn't see, which probably would have kept me out of doing what I did. But, it was, it gave my passion a place to live and be carried forward. I did learn that, it's not a good idea to start a nonprofit on a credit card. Just a side note to anybody out there thinking about doing it. The most interesting thing was I thought it was going to be just a no-brainer. Turns out I was the one suffering from no-brainerisms. People did not just run to the door and say, I want to be involved outside of the music community. When I reached out for support, I would say, these are our role models. If we want to change the way the world works, mental health-wise, if we want to change the stigma attached to depression, addiction, anxiety, we want to change this, we have to have an ongoing conversation with the next generation. I said, musicians have that. They're your kids' role models. We have the stage, the microphone's on, the lights are up. Healthy role models will make for a healthy community. And it took a long time for any part outside of the music community to go, yeah, that's not a bad idea. But that was, I did not see that piece coming at all. And then the other thing that I learned relatively quickly is, while we had what we called a music community, what it really more resembled, once I was able to fully stick my head in, was not a community as much as a group of somewhat like-minded people in the same place at the same time, doing their independent contractors. And so the first thing I had to do was learn, what is community building? I knew that we had the power of music, which is that in the great Venn diagram of life, is where a lot of cultures and a lot of differences come together in that circle of music. And it's extremely powerful. First thing I did was just try to, galvanize the music community behind even the understanding that mental health is for you too. Turned out it was much more of a marginalized population than I knew. They're up on stage, they eat in the kitchen, and they go out the back. It was really interesting structural concepts that I ran into there very early on. not too many years later, the next year or so, when Dave got involved, and I think that's really kind of what woke me up to the activism side of what I was doing. And yes, it is a good, it was a good idea. And a lot of people, like I say, I didn't plan to be in the nonprofit world. I didn't plan to be the adult in the room, but the opportunity was tremendous. And I like to look, I was asked early on, what do you want to see in 10 years? Now it's been 25 years. And at the time I said, I want to be able to look back and say nothing's changed except everything. And I truly believe that we've accomplished so much of that, the way people more freely, and especially in the music industry, it's the message is spread out, and stigma has gone down. So one of the, I don't know if it's not an elephant in the room, but it's more like the impishness in the room. I've seen several panels when we talk about Dave and, his full character, and sometimes point out, the crankier side, the brusque, the direct side of Dave. But I do want to point out there's a certain impishness about Dave at times, and I'll tell you a story that kind of launches me into the framing of our conversation. Dave and I were at Folk Alliance in Memphis in 2009, and he said, "Hey, let's go grab some lunch." And we go down, and two people joined us, a little older than we were, and sat down, and we were just having a conversation. I'm eating my sandwich, and Dave's talking to him, and all of a sudden I kind of noticed these words start coming through, and they were talking about SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Committee from the 60s, and they started talking about the song "We Shall Overcome," but they were talking about it at a depth, that was starting to blow my mind and making it difficult for me to eat, because by this point I was full into, activism and, what do I do next? And, I had no mentors and any of that. And anyway, I'm sitting there, and finally I just kind of look, I stopped eating and I go, "Who are you people? What is going on?" And I look over at Dave, and he's looking out of the side of his eye with that little smile on his face. And he goes, "Yeah, I thought that'd catch your attention." And it was Candy and Guy Carwin, who were very important in the Highlander Folk School, very important in the civil rights movement, and very important in understanding the power of music and how to use music in the many ways that music can be utilized, not used, but utilized to carry a message, to bind a mission, to bring people together on a common ground, and really set out and change the world. The suggested reading for this panel is called "Celebrity Skin," which is an article Dave wrote in '99 about the song and about the Highlander Institute. And the stories about the song became important in "We Shall Overcome," and how a small organization in the hills of Tennessee, Highlander Folk School, used music to bind together a massive difference into a unity for change. The song found its way from the labor movements in Charleston, South Carolina, to Pete Seeger, to Highlander, through Guy Carwin.
Peyton, for some reason, your mic got muted again. So if you could unmute.
How long has that been?
Not too long. Just when you started the reading. So
okay, all right. So I'll start that reading over then. The suggested article for Dave Marsh, "Celebrity Skin," from Rock and Rap Confidential. Dave talks about the song "We Shall Overcome" and how it a small organization in the hills of Tennessee called the Highlander Folk School used the music to bind together massive differences into a unity for change. The song found its way from the labor movement of Charleston, South Carolina, to Pete Seeger, to the Highlander School, through a peer of Pete Seeger's named Guy Carwin, who became the musical director, and subsequently taught the song to his students and to SNCC and to a great number of people within the movements that were going on at that time. Uh, and so it turns out what Dave was smiling about, what he knew and what he thought was funny, not to tell me going into the lunch, but we were having lunch with Candy and Guy Carolyn, who had so had an impact on my life in ways that I didn't know it at the time. And I just kind of, and I just look at Dave and I can, just the magnitude of power of music as a tool of social change. And that's why we're here today, to talk about the role of music, creating, supporting communities, opening spaces for marginalized groups, and the challenge of bringing different communities into the conversation. So with that, I want to start introducing the panelists, and I'd like you guys to, I'll introduce you as best I can. Some of you, there's so much to say about each of you and about your programs, but I'll give an introduction, and then I'd like for you, as we go forward, to give a little talk about how you got there. If Dave was involved, and it's always good to keep Dave in the conversation on this, because again, this is our common ground that we're all dancing on. And just kind of how you got into the business, if you expected to be running a nonprofit at any time in your life. So I want to just first off, I want to start with you, Bill Ayers, founded in 1975 with the late singer Harry Chapin. Bill founded there you are, founded the World Hunger Year. He founded Why Hunger. Here we go. And with a mission to end world hunger through supporting grassroots movements and fueling community solutions rooted in social, environmental, racial, and economic justice. They're working to end hunger and advance the human race to nutritious foods in the U.S. around the world by focusing on the roots of the issue. Their work is people and community focused. Music and art is an integral part of this organization. Why Hunger partners with artists and musicians in order to raise money and bring people together to fight hunger through Artists Against Hunger and Poverty, which is stewarded by 50 participating artist ambassadors, including founding members Bruce Springsteen. They have a program called Homemade Jams, where everybody can host a house concert to raise money for Why Hunger. Music brings people together, and strong communities support one another and fight for the human rights of all their members. So Bill, it's very excited for you to be here. Interesting path. I know that you started out, I believe you were in the church. As Father Bill on a radio show talking with rock musicians about the spiritual side of their music and the impact of those things. And I believe you had Harry Chapin on, and you got to talking about the hunger. Tell us a little about that.
Good morning. Good morning, folks. I'm happy to be here with you. Yeah, Harry Chapin and I met each other in 1973. And I had this couple of crazy ideas. One of them was to do a large concert to fight hunger. And another one was to do something that I called a Hungerthon. And that is to go on the radio and talk about hunger and raise funds and awareness about the problem. And one of the first people who heard about all this was Dave Marsh. He was writing for Newsday, a newspaper on Long Island at the time. And he called me up. And I said, well, we should get together. So I arranged a lunch for Harry Chapin and Dave Marsh and myself. And that was really the start of our partnership and of our friendship. And that goes back an awfully long time to about, I would say, probably about 1974, 75. And so we started the organization. Harry Chapin and I started the organization in 75. And he was the major fundraiser, obviously, and a great spokesperson. He believed that he should put his talent and his money where his mouth was. And so he spent a lot of his time and his energy trying to raise money to help hungry people. We decided to start this organization, and now we call it Why Hunger. It used to be called World Hunger Year, but now it's called Why Hunger. And we asked the question, why? Why is there hunger in a world that can feed itself? And why is there hunger in America, the richest country in the history of the world? And we always knew that the root cause of hunger was poverty. And the root cause of poverty is powerlessness. And the powerlessness that comes to people from economic injustice and all kinds of other things. So that's how we kind of started off. And I had done the first network radio show with Bruce Springsteen back in 1973. There was a wonderful man that a lot of you know about, John Hammond. The great John Hammond discovered everybody, Count Basie and Lester Young. And, he was an old jazz guy, but he also got into all kinds of music. And he really was the discoverer of Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan. And so he played a big role in all of this because he and I became friends. And he was the one who said to me, I think you would do a good job with Bruce Springsteen. So he had Bruce come over and we did the first network radio show that Bruce had ever done. And so I go back a long way with Bruce Springsteen as well. And Bruce has been a major player in our organization, Why Hunger. He's helped us raise millions and millions of dollars. And he's performed for us many, many times. And we are a grassroots support organization. We go all over the country and we help to support organizations that are fighting hunger and poverty, not just by providing emergency food. That's just the first step, but going beyond that and helping people to get out of poverty. So that's why we always ask the why questions. And Dave was very good at why questions, that's for sure. And over the years, he and I have done a lot of neat stuff together. For example, we did a whole series on the roots of rock and roll. We interviewed some wonderful performers, and including Muddy Waters. One of the few interviews done with Muddy Waters, and Dave and I did that. We did one with several other performers. So that was a whole other dimension of us working together. But the key thing here was fighting hunger and poverty. And Dave was always very much aware that you had to go beyond just emergency food and get to the root causes. And so we've had a wonderful friendship and partnership over the years from a musical point of view, but also from the point of view of social justice.
Awesome. Yeah, that's again, how did you see yourself when you were a radio host? It says you were a Catholic priest.
That's right. I was doing both of those things. And it's funny, I got to interview some incredible people. And I was on the ABC radio network, and I was on all over the country. And but I didn't have a good time in New York. So a friend of mine got me connected with WPLJ, and they said, well, you're only doing 15-minute shows. Can you do an hour? I said, sure, I can do an hour. So I started doing that show. And then several years later, the program director said to me, there's a guy out in Detroit that I think you know, and he does a midnight show for young people. And he said, I think you could do that. I said, sure, I'll do that. So I started that one in 1975. And I did it for all the years until 2 years ago, when we found out that WPLJ was sold and we all lost our jobs. So I'm an ex-radio DJ and talk show host right now. I'd still be doing it, but the station is now nothing to do with the kind of stuff that we did. So the music and social activism have always been together for me. And there's also obviously a big spiritual dimension to it, because people need to be nourished in body and in spirit. I tried to do that on my radio show for all those years. And also we always think about that when we're working with people around the country. It's very important for us to be building community with folks, and we continue to do that.
Yeah, I so agree with that. So much of the growth and development itself is a natural process that we've stymied in so many ways. And if we create an environment that nurtures the development and growth, then people grow, and I find that that's kind of what you're saying, is in the work you've done, the development has to be fed, the food is such an important part. And I think that's, one of the great questions in the world is why are there hungry people? Well,
we believe that you have to start at the grassroots.
Yeah.
So our organization supports many, many grassroots organizations all over the country and now all over the world as well. And so what we do is to try to find out what their needs are and to make connections, build community, just the kind of thing you're talking about before, of building community with folks all over the country. So there are these hundreds of organizations, thousands of organizations actually around the country that are doing very good things, not just feeding people, but helping people get out of poverty. And that's the key thing there of developing power, because poverty comes from powerlessness. Getting people empowered is a big part of our work.
Perfect segue. Thank you very much. Moving to Ernie Perez, who works very much in that arena, working with homelessness. Ernie has always been both musically and community oriented. His work focuses mainly on the ways music can directly address poverty and the need for those living in poverty. And a quote from Ernie set us up for hearing from him. Art, like poverty, is everywhere. Art, like the brilliance of poor people on this planet, has the power to transform reality. The unification of art and common struggle will truly be our lifeline in this century. Without it, we are simply factions. With it, we are a force to be reckoned with. With it, we can get up and get out of poverty once and for all. And Ernie, along with Lee Ballinger, Jose Luis Rodriguez, David Sandoval, Carl Holloway, founded Rockamole Productions. You have to tell me what year that was, and maybe early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s, yeah.
And which aimed to infuse street level creativity into organizational expressions addressing the needs of the poor and bringing music and art directly into the healing process. And the quote that I've written down from you, Ernie, says, "All the laws of the land will never conquer what we hold in our hearts." So
Amen.
now I know you and Lee are working on Artists United to End Homelessness. Kind of bring us up to date. Plus, I want to know: did you plan to be the adult in the room? You know, did you wake up as a kid and go, "Man, if I could only run a nonprofit, my life would be perfect"?
Wow, that's crazy, right? It's crazy. It's all about a journey, man. It's a journey, and I want to say good morning to everyone. I'm on the West Coast. It's morning time out here, and I just want to say, man, I'm honored to be on this panel, and I say in the name of Dave Marsh, man. I've known Dave for almost 30 years, and ever since the first time I was in a room with him, I just kind of hung on every word that he would say, in response to on panels or what have you, and in a dinner setting. I just found that I always looked at Dave as a beacon for humanity, and he's always been there with all the work we've been doing here on the West Coast from the days of the Music Alliance back in the early 90s. Now, as you talked about, Artists United to End Homelessness, it's a huge thing, the work that all of us are doing. I first want to mention something. I want to speak to something about our 14 steps, just to talk about Artists United to End Homelessness. I want to go over these steps because I think they're very important for people to get an eye view of what we're about. Step 1, stop talking about shelters as housing. Step 2, overcome the poverty pimps by bringing the voices of the unhoused to the front. Step 3, replace the stereotypes of homeless people with faith-based unity. Step 4, study the actual causes of homelessness. Step 5, understand the full scope of homelessness from the streets to the college campuses. Unite the housed and the unhoused, including all movements to make housing available and affordable. Step 7, unite housed and unhoused artists, whether they do music, writing, visual art, dance, whatever. Step 8, don't think of homeless people as second-class citizens with lesser needs than the housed population. Step 9, decide what the purpose of housing is. Is it to make billionaires even richer, or is it to provide everyone with a decent place to live? It can't be both. Step 10, combine efforts to ensure immediate survival with promotion of a vision to end homelessness. Step 11, get off the defensive and go on the offensive. Step 12, introduce new ideas into the national discussion. Without the injection of groundbreaking ideas, the discussion of homelessness is limited to various forms of charity. Take the people without homes and put them in the homes without people is step 13, and step 14 is end homelessness, don't manage it. So, Artists United originally, we wanted to create an intersection for artists and artist lovers alike. And there are many reasons for this. We need to bring to light, as artists, we need to tell our truth, right? And our truth in history must be written by us. We need to keep the story straight and keep it real. We need to talk about the industry of homelessness. It's very important. There's a lot of profits going on here for putting profits before people. We got to put a light on that. We need to talk about the misuse of resources, and that's going on in all the states across the country. We got to focus and highlight, that greed takes a big hit and takes a lot out of the resources to ending homelessness. We got to talk about ending the criminalization of homeless people. We need to address regentrification. For humanity, it's about us being unselfish, and it's hard to do sometimes, but we must speak our truth. Every life, we look at it that every life is valuable, and that must be our standard, and we can't be below that standard, man. Every life is valuable, and it's going to take all generations. We've Artists United over this past year during this pandemic, we have managed to have Zoom events every 2 weeks, and we have artists from all walks, filmmakers, publishers, directors, songwriters, poets, DJs. We've had middle school poets come on. Recently, we had a poet that came on, and she was incredible to tell her truth from the eyes of a middle school student. And that's what we need to raise up. We have to use our resources, guys. As artists, it's going to be so important as we go on, and as a collective. As artists, we are humanity, everybody, and that's gonna be a big, important role in how we do this and how we look at homelessness and ending homelessness in the future.
Yeah, awesome. And how did you actually end up in that seat, Ernie? Other than just your heart, which is clear.
Well, I'll say this, man. God is first in my life, and I'm a crooked stick. You talked about at the beginning. You say we're a group of saints and sinners, and I was like, amen to that, my brother. But it's just it's a calling. It's been a calling for all of us out here. We've managed that same group of men have been working together, and women. For years, man, and it's just it's a calling, it's a need, it's how our hearts beat, out here, you know what I mean, and we can't just stand back and just be motionless and speechless about it. We got to go out there and put it out there in the forefront, and create, like I said earlier, an intersection for artists and artist lovers alike. It's going to take everybody to put this out, and we really feel that if we touch hearts, we can change minds.
There you go. Amen. All right, I'm going to move on to further into the center section now. Introduce longtime friend Greg Johnson. Greg's one of those interesting people in my life where you want to just razz him and give him a hard time because it's just good fun, and at the same time, what he's done for his community and for the overall music community, health, well-being, helping musicians further their career in Oklahoma, of all places, and what he's done to spread the word of Woody Guthrie's legacy is pretty great. He'd been living in Austin till '92, moved to in and been working as a music journalist, publicist, and host of the Woody Guthrie concerts. Headed back to Oklahoma and had a thought to move to Nashville and work in the music industry, but told his friend Kevin Wells, Kevin said, brother, I'm afraid if you did come to Nashville, one of two things might happen. You would either get killed or kill someone. So Greg, understanding the wisdom of that, stayed in Oklahoma City with the caveat he wouldn't stay if he couldn't get involved in music. Mary Reynolds heard this, offered him a place to host concerts. And in Greg's hands, that's become the Blue Door, a space for people to gather, listen, study, and celebrate music. It's hosted since '93 over 2,000 concerts from artists around the world. Really happy that Michael opened our show because, as I understand it, Greg, Michael opened the Blue Door.
Yeah, he did. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. He opened the Blue Door in January of 93, and I thought, hell, this is easy. We had 50 people show up by doing just mail outs, little cards, you know. This is before, you know, anybody was doing internet stuff. I go, man, this is simple. There's 50 people off of Mary's mailing list. They never heard of Michael Fracasso. I said, this is simple. This is going to be the easiest thing I've ever done, you know? And we, you know, and I kept doing it. Now, I never wanted to be a club guy, you know. I was really kind of, you know, wanting to follow in Dave's footsteps and John Landau, you know, Ben Edmonds I would read, all these guys in Cream and Rolling Stone, and then I started writing for the newspaper at OU, and I kind of wanted to get into that, but I was not as good at it as I should have been, and I didn't like interviewing artists enough to want to really do it, you know. So I could have maybe been a guy that could have done a little capsule review thing for some paper, and I did write for the Oklahoma Gazette for 7 or 8 years after when the Blue Door started, and I did do some pieces for Oklahoma Today magazine. But my music journalism career was definitely going to be a total little sideline once in a while thing. Having said that, when we were doing this thing, I go, I couldn't remember when I met Dave. You know, I said, when was it? And I knew it was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tribute to Woody Guthrie, but I couldn't remember the date. And so I got online and Googled it, and my review of that event for No Depression magazine came up, which said, okay, it was 1996. And that's where I met Dave. And I met Dave at the very moment Jimmy LaFave was singing Bob Childers' Woody's Road in Cleveland. And Dave came up to me and goes, he kind of knew my roots, I think. I think he had my record we put out, Pastures of Plenty, and Austin Celebration of Woody Guthrie. So I think he had that. And so he kind of knew who I was. And I said, yeah, I know who you are. I used to argue with you in Cream and Rolling Stone when I needed to or whatever, you know. And he thought that was a Jimmy song. And I said, oh no, that's a Bob Childers song. And then his eyes lit up and he goes, oh wow. Yeah. I said, and I kind of explained Bob Childers. So Dave, in that way, Dave sort of became part of the Okie Texas music scene with Jimmy LaFave and Bob Childers and our buddies, the Red Dirt Rangers and Terry Buffalo Ware. And then of course, Michael Fracasso and Alejandro and Patty Griffin in Austin. I mean, so Dave is kind of, you know, we kind of adopted him, and Peyton, you know this, we sort of brought him into the Southwest, you know, and, you know, and he would always tease me, you know, because I tell him my parents were, you know, from Arkansas and everything. He goes, you're not an Okie, you're an Arkie. I said, I'm not an Arkie. I was born in Oklahoma. That makes me an Okie, you know. And so Dave and I just always had a great, I mean, immediately a rapport of like, yeah, we can like give each other shit the rest of our lives. And love each other, you know, and, you know, I'd argue with him about stuff. He'd, you know, he always, you know, would think I was too moderate about some things, you know, and it's just been a wonderful relationship because he wants people to tell him, you know, what are you doing? What's going on over there? And how could it all connect to everything else we're all doing? Like, you know, stuff Ernie's doing and Bill's doing. It all is the same circle, I think. And I was never not going to have the Blue Door be political. You're not supposed to wear your politics on your sleeve if you're running a music venue. You know, you can kind of dance around a little bit. Not me. I went straight for the juggler. It's like, you know, if you're going to be a right-wing asshole in Oklahoma, I'm not going to probably like you very much, and I'm not going to fucking entertain you, you know? And so that's just been my, you know, I've always been for the underdogs. The Blue Door, as Jimmy Webb called it, is the liberal lighthouse. And I'm not going to be, checking registrations at the door and that kind of bullshit. But when they walk in and they see what's on these walls and they see what we're about, they'll know that we are every bit about social justice and equality as we are about music, and entertainment's the farthest thing from my mind. You know.
Yeah, and then it's looking at the mission itself. You know, it's a little bit different. Very kind of, I'm kind of between. So Bill's working on hunger, Ernie poverty, these large pieces. The first thing, I was saying, for me, is I had to understand and learn how to build community or connect the community of the music community. And I think that's a very similar mission to what the Blue Door, became, and like we needed an outpost there, as it were. I do know for a fact, the impact that it's had on Austin music.
Well, yeah, it is. It's like, I mean, I would get criticized in Oklahoma City, especially in the 90s. It's like, all he does is book Austin people.
Well, I think it was pretty tremendous for us down here to have.
And then I said, I'm sorry. I booked the songwriters that touch my heart, and the songwriters that I think that even if they don't touch my heart, are they working in an area that I can recommend and not just, have such distaste for, that I'll book them. So it's not.
Well, and
I never said I'm going to book somebody because they draw. Thank God some have.
Yeah.
But it's like, I've never said you can't come back here because you did not have enough people in the audience. Never once in my life did I say that. I have said you cannot come back here after you sell this place out because you're an asshole. And that happened.
Yeah, but you were looking in the mirror at that time.
Of course I was.
A quote that I have that I've always liked, and I can see it in each person's mission when we're talking about it, and the importance in building community. One of the things, and I know what the things that Dave absolutely gifted to me early on, is there's a Nietzsche quote in Beyond Good and Evil that says, "It's not enough to be a genius, you must also have permission." Right, my friend? And, the Blue Door, it became it's a listening room. It's very much like the Cactus Cafe was here, where it's not the biggest place in the world, but it's a place to listen and be received if you're an artist. It's a very much of the conversation, and you gave a lot of people permission, and that Ernie, and Bill both, working with groups that, like you said, are powerless. Bill, that core of powerlessness. And when you say, hey, you're one of us, it changes everything. It builds resilience. It gives that permission. When Dave called me that next year and said, hey, let's do this panel, something I'm out there, as far as I know, fighting in the, by myself in the wasteland. And all of a sudden I had permission for the mission to be received, and a platform to speak from. I think those are very important components of that, starting that nucleus and building community.
Well, the Blue Door was just basically an outgrowth of my my personality, basically. I'm kind of for the underdog, maybe because I'm a longtime Baltimore Orioles fan. I'm kind of for the underdog in almost every situation, right? If somebody's not talking about a songwriter enough, who I think's really neglected, I'll chime in. So I've just kind of been that way. But the Blue Door's not folk church. It's not like a precious place where, you better, we had a cappuccino machine going and all that stuff. No, the beer bottles, it's BYOB. Beer bottles will fall on the floor. So there's a looseness to it, but a total respect for what's on stage. It's not precious. As Lucinda Williams said, I love the Blue Door because it's really intimate, but not precious.
That's a good.
And that's kind of what it is, because I really, I don't like the music business very much. I just have to put up with it. So, and that's what we've done. So
within the spirit of we shall overcome and how that builds community and gives permission and a place to stand. I think the first first time I got a donation check was a big gala during South by that Music Cares, which was new. And that was someone involved with, was put together, and we were getting a check from that. And I said, with music as the fulcrum, our mission as the lever, give us a place to stand and we can move the world. And I really, it's that stage, the presence, and the permission to be more than powerless, Bill, that I think is comes through the music so well, because the music is speaking to so many people. I had a couple of questions off of that framing, and everybody pull in any Dave writings, that you keep him as the other member of the panel. And this came from in conversation with Lee Ballinger yesterday, talking about your project out there with Lee, Ernie. He's kind of thrown out some questions, and he said, I think these are relevant to our program, but they're probably relevant to everything that's going on. And I think it is. I think it's a couple of important aspects. And he asked, what's the difference between charity and change? And this to me also touches on, I want this kind of in your answer of it, charity versus change and the role of the musician, because Dave has an absolute stance on some of this. He had written in that Celebrity Skin, a musician can't be the center of social movement because it's not what they do. That there's plenty to be done. Some's going to be with guitars and some's not with guitars in hand. But knowing our role, and he sometimes gets a little feisty with some music celebrities that stand out in front of the mission and say, I'm leading this, as opposed to behind the mission and I'm supporting this. So, and we, music community gets asked a lot to raise money. And sometimes in Austin, I remember Charlie Sexton early on saying, what do we need to do? And it's like, well, Charlie, you can't play a show for us every week because you can't make a living. It's you're gonna hurt your market. Help us. And so I really kind of instituted at least a way to offer to pay the musicians, but have them, yes, I want them to be out there because they've got the microphone, but I don't want to take advantage of it. These are this is the community I'm trying to serve. So, the charity versus change and the role of musicians, I'd like to get feedback from you guys on thoughts on that.
Well, I agree. I've never thought songs change the world. I never thought musicians, all they can do is inspire the work. That's it. That's it. I mean, listen, if songs had been that powerful, Blowing in the Wind would have worked. Okay. All right. It didn't. It didn't. What's going on didn't work. Okay. It worked to inspire us.
Amen.
Marvin was able to, I'm sure Berry Gordy was about to, crap his pants, right? Like, you're going to kill Motown, man. But the artist has to just they got to be allowed to be a citizen too. Okay. And let them be a citizen in their own way and do their own thing. Some people are over the top, right, about it. Some people are subtle, and musicians just have to be themselves. I've pushed them to be a little more aggressive during the Trump years than before, because is disastrous, I think Reagan and Bush were, and they were. The climate got worse to where it required more speaking out. It really did. But we got to let them just be themselves and help us. And sometimes, hey, we've been working our asses so hard on this, and trying to get groups together or whatever. Let's get our buddies together and just have fun.
Yeah,
Let's have some fun. Listen to some fun rock and roll. I mean, you know, I want to hear somebody play Louie Louie in here again. Terry Buffalo Ware, if you're listening to me, you know, I like goofy rock and roll as much as I love, you know, the great, you know,
Yeah.
Jimmy Webb melodies or Woody Guthrie lyrics or whatever. I like, you know, it all works together. So musicians have to be themselves, and we've got to lead them, you know.
I like, I mean,
Yeah.
that speaks to that. And Bill, you know, your focus on understanding the powerlessness that comes, you know, there's so much comes from powerless. People swing big hammers when they feel powerless. They feel unheard when they're powerless. So what's your concept on the charity versus change and the musician's role within that? Oh, you're on mute. Let's see.
Okay. Am I off mute now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Charity is a wonderful thing, but it's just a start. Change is something that goes on forever. And so we try to work with people who are not just giving a helping hand. That's a good step. And especially in this last year, charity has been very important, but you can't stop there. That's just the beginning. The key thing that we've always talked about is change. It's getting power into communities, into individual people, into families. So we work with community-based organizations all over the country and all over the world that are doing amazing things. And we just provide resources to help them. We don't ever tell them what to do. We don't ever try to say, well, you know, you're not doing it right. Ours is to be there as servants, to be servants of people who are creating change in the world and in their own communities. So we have a program called Artists Against Hunger and Poverty that we started with Bruce actually many years ago. And we've gotten many artists over the years to do individual things in communities to raise funds for those organizations, but to go beyond that then and to try to change what's happening, to try to change, move from charity to change, from charity to building community and also building forces to be able to fight against the forces of evil. So we've managed to work with really thousands of amazing people all over the country and around the world now. And we've seen some of the things that have happened because of that, not because of us, but because we have been able to touch these wonderful groups who are doing amazing, amazing things. So charity is a good start, but if it ends there, it doesn't do the job.
Well, I really like that. I like the actions, you know, that speak louder than those words that you're pointing to over the last 40 years of doing that and being able to watch the growth of that develop. I look at it, you know, with that powerlessness, and when we're trying to help a vulnerable population or a marginalized population, you can't make somebody more vulnerable and help them at the same time. And I ended up adopting very similar to that, Bill, where it's, you know, I go and support and stand behind, but not to help and stand in front of. And I kind of hear that in what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And on your side, Ernie, I had a tweet this morning that kind of made me think of you in this particular conversation for some reason, maybe because it's funny and a little ornery. It was called Party Game, Cards Against Philanthropy. And our theory of change is blank. And the big theme of our annual report was blank. And the two fill-ins were our theory of change is field building, sports field building. And the big theme of our annual report was uncomfortable aggregations of wealth. It's and that's, you know, some philanthropy is about the philanthropist, the change that Bill's talking about, the music as Greg's talking about, and the work you're doing is really, it's as I would call it, poor philanthropy, I guess. You know.
Well, yeah. You know, it's interesting. You know, we talk about charity and change. You know, and from our mindset, you know, housing is a right. You know what I'm saying? So we don't. we don't use that connotation as charity. As far as change, what we're talking about, I mean, Greg kind of touched on this. Um, it's the artist coming up and being able to move people, right? We talked about that, right? And like a song ain't gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that what we can do is change perceptions from the disinformation that goes out, and people are just bought into on why people are homeless, what that's about. Oh, they're probably on drugs, they're probably this, they're probably that. How do we change that perception? So it's very important, like even as artists, I'm not homeless, you know what I'm saying, but I can use my resources to let someone that is homeless speak to what it is to be homeless, right? And prime example is we once had an event, and we had a young lady speaking. She had just received her a bachelor's degree from Cal Poly Pomona. Very well spoken, talked about her education, and everybody was really into it. People are listening to her, and then she said, I lived in my car during these 4 years, and I lived off sometimes $2 a day. I'd go to AM/PM market and get a hot dog, that kind of deal. And it's amazing to watch the effect that had on folks that were there. They were kind of like, this aha moment in certain people that were like, whoa. They kind of looked at that, and then they had all these questions for her, and they just couldn't believe that this woman that was sitting there before them was this homeless person for 4 years, as she was getting her education. So for us, it's very important with Artists United to End Homelessness that we are able to create that stage for the homeless folks themselves as artists to get up, tell their stories, and humanize what it is, these people that are homeless, and take that criminalization away. So that's going to be a big part, I think, moving forward in changing people's outlook and realizing that these people deserve to have homes, and let's put the people, take the homes without people and put, the people without homes, put them in the homes without people, right? So that's what we want to do, yeah.
And as we were saying, we were talking the other day and mentioned, I was in a MHMR meeting where they were going, how do we help those people out there that need us, kind of thing. And I said, until we get to the point where we realize them as us, I don't think we're going to get there, and so.
I'd like to,
yeah.
I'm off mute, right? Good, okay.
Yeah.
A very important thing here. The game has changed, folks. It has changed because of this last election. And we have an opportunity now to do some things on a massive scale we've never been able to do before. Because when Barack Obama became the president, they were very timid about, shaking up things and didn't do enough. And I think everybody who was part of that regime recognizes that now. And so a lot of those people now are back into power in the Biden administration, and many of them are going to go much further than they did before. And you can see it. I mean, when you see Biden's plans and all of the different things he's trying to put together, it's like a wish list that all of us would say yes to. The question is how you get it done. The question is how you get people to stick with it when it's difficult and when you get some opposition. So I think we're in a very different position now. And all of us who are grassroots organizers and are working on the grassroots level have to make sure that our voices get heard in the halls of power. We didn't have a chance to do that for the last 4 years, but now we do. And we need to not let up the pressure and think, well, they're in there, they're going to do all the right things. That's not necessarily going to be the case. Got to make sure that the things that are being talked about now, when it comes to healthcare and childcare and jobs and all kinds of issues that all of us who are on this call have believed in all of our lives, this is an opportunity now for us to do something very, very big. And it's not going to happen just at the top. It needs to come from the bottom up of people who, like all of you folks, who are working from the bottom up to make sure that our voices get heard up on the top, because there's just amazing possibilities now to change America.
And, the Highlander Institute had a very specific view of that, as well as Dave's Celebrity Skin, saying, it's the population that needs the support understands the problem and has the answers contained within it. And so we have to really integrate that message, you know, and I do think the music community can help carry that message as we nurture and grow that bottom up, but get it up to the top down where we meet in that. One of the things on within that Highlander institution as well is how do we become community? And one of the things they mentioned was we share rituals. That's where I think music within the church, music within community organizations, within the civil rights, we're sharing that the ritual of music. Who was it yesterday? Phyllis Pollock said, Alejandro had said this too, listening to music was almost a ritual. We would all sit around with our friends and listen to the new album, you know, and that listening experience, which, you know, there may be something to talk to about how social media has changed that experience.
It's ruined it.
Spread people back out again. That's what Alejandro was, you know, it's like kids these days, you know, or we used to sit around, and that shared ritual, I think, is important. And I know as a music community and art community, we can help rebridge and bring the people back together instead of, you know, you get cut out of the herd if you get everybody separated out like that. Also, one thing Alejandro I did want to mention and throw this out to you guys. I don't know if it's just an overall statement or spark a thought in your head. When he had said, you know, they asked me if critics, the panel was discussing, are music critics important? And he said, yeah, they're important. He said, they were, you know, we were reading that. He said, but really, especially in Dave's work, he wasn't just reviewing a record. He was connecting the dots. He connected it to politics, to labor struggles, to race relations. He was connecting those dots for me so that I understood when I'm writing a song what that means. You know, it gave a place to stand again. And I still believe, you know, that within the music community, that some of the role that we have is, you know, standing with the powerless, standing with the homeless, and saying them as us, and connecting those dots so that people have a place to be. And very simply, Ernie, you know, with homelessness, it's not just, you know, lack of shelter. It's the social statement of, yeah, you actually don't belong. You don't have a place to be. And you know, the work you guys are doing, I do believe, is created and helped create a place to be for a lot of people, and as our generations move forward and grow.
I think one of the important things before you get, I mean, what Ernie's doing, before you even get to all the aspects of doing the work, is how do you look at these people? Okay. Do you look at a homeless person with disdain, or do you have some compassion, even if you can't immediately help them at that moment? What is your heart saying to them? And
Greg, I work with different populations a lot still to this day, and from everything from domestic issues to, you know, more social issues. But I found that there is no resolution without compassion. It has to go through compassion. I always say if beating was the answer, I'd be the first in line with a big stick, you know, but it doesn't answer anything. And so that compassion you mentioned.
I'm going to say this with if it doesn't, it sounds with a lack of humility, forgive me. The greatest compliment I've ever had in my life, Michael Fracasso told me, he said, I have always noticed how you look at homeless people and how you look them directly in the eye and talk to them, and do not demean them and look down at them. And you always look for whatever you can give them out of in your pocket. And I said, because I'm close to being them too, Michael. I said, if it, you know, I understand that I'm just a bad break away from being in that situation. And how can you not have love in your heart for these people? Mm-hmm. I woke up one morning getting ready, you know, and this sounds, you talk about white elitism here. I'm walking out of the blue door. People don't know this. I live in the back of the blue door because it's not because it's a cool thing to do. It's because it's the only way I can have a roof over my head, folks. So I live at the back of the blue door. I'm getting ready to go play golf, you know, my little wonderful white elitist sport that I love so. Apologies to Tiger Woods, but and there is a person sleeping on my patio, right? Obviously, just sleeping there. Now, some homeowners, some people will say, "Hey, man, get off my. You need to go. You need to get off my property. You know, blah blah blah." Well, I just said, "Bless you," and walked by and let him sleep. Leave the guy alone. Quit being afraid of these people. Quit being afraid of poor people. Quit being afraid of people that are have nothing.
Fear is not going to move us. So with
Anyway.
that, I want to invite Danny back in. See if there's any questions from the viewing public.
Hi.
I do want to thank you. It's been I'm a little stuttering just in standing under the massive work that has gone on with my panel, and I appreciate y'all letting me do the talking, but let's hear what everybody else has to say if there's anything.
It's been really good, y'all. Thanks. We have a couple, kind of a two-part question from Craig Warner, and because it touches who was one of the organizers, and because it touches on several things I think are worth mentioning, and I'm going to ask it to Ernie, but I think both Greg and Bill can be thinking about, and Peyton can be thinking about ways that you can kind of feed off of that. I'd like to hear Ernie talk about the way Rockamole incorporates visual art into its work, thinking about a mural where youth created images of the world they're in, and then around the corner of the world they can imagine. Or more generally, just how he works to help youth create their own communities. And then an additional point, Ernie was in this fantastic band collective called the Boxing Gandhis, and Craig wondered if Ernie wanted to speak to how that provided a model of what a community can be. So,
wow. Well, on the first thing about the kids with the mural, that's really took me back a minute. Very powerful what they did. The elementary school students, they were asked to paint pictures of what their neighborhood looked like to them now, and then to paint a picture of what they would like their neighborhood to look like in the future. And the instructor there put up 2 window panes in a corner, and he made a corner, 2 window panes, and behind this window pane he put the current scenario photo artistic pieces they did, and then on the other behind the next pane he put what they would like their neighborhood to see. And it was just really it was really heartbreaking, man, to see how they view their neighborhood today. There was everything in there, from police brutality to gang violence on each other, people in the streets, even people like just thrown out, drugged out, or what have you. And you just see these renderings that just blow your mind, from what they see, and then to see how they envision what they would want their neighborhood to look like. It was totally, people being good to each other, man. People giving, like literally handing things to each other, arms around each other, showing love, showing family together, and showing that respect for elders, you name it. It was just like, it's mind blowing, and when you see this, Carvel Holloway, who's part of our group, he was a middle school music teacher, but now he's a high school music teacher in Dominguez here, at Dominguez High School. And he always talks about the kids, man. The kids are smart, man. They know how things should be. They're just not. They just don't feel empowered, and they're seeing these things that's it's like what we've left them. And we just say, yo, man, our future's in good hands, man, with these kids. They're coming up, so we just want to give them resources and say, yeah, you know what, you got the right idea. Stay with that, keep with that, and as they're growing up, man, they're keeping that, they're figuring out their way, their place in this movement, and they will soon be using their resources as adults, man, to make these changes. So this question really took me back on this, man. It was a very emotional, but very uplifting and enlightenment, man, to the youth, man. And we've got to really support them, and we have to, this perception of what it is out here, we got to let them know, no, that's not the way we're supposed to do each other. This is how we should do each other. We have to do that. So that's deep. That took me back, but very powerful. As far as the Boxing Gandhis, man, we were a 7-piece band, male, female. We had Asians, Middle Eastern Indian, Mexican, indigenous, you name it. We were all mixed up. It was kind of, they used to compare us a lot to Sly and the Family Stone in that way. We were just mixed, and there were believers, and then there were atheists in the group, man. So we had everything you could think of in this group, and we had some major headbutting, and we had some major moments of that, how that music would bring us together as we wrote these songs, and we'd have these concerts, and you touch people, and it was the positive side of what we had that trumped out the negativity, and the differences that we had, right? And that's kind of humanity, man. That's what we got to do. I often say that. I always look at the model with the justice. She's got the scale, right? She's got the blindfold on and the scale, right? And one scale is tipping down lower than the other. And I always say that the one that's lower is the love side, right? You know what I'm saying? And then you got the evil on the other side, man, And every time we go out and we do something for each other, whether people know you're doing it for them or not, it does not matter. We put a little drop. We put another drop on this side over here to keep that weight, okay, to keep that love side heavier. You know what I'm saying? More overloaded than the evil side. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, the Gandhis, that was a woohoo.
On that side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. Yeah.
Very good.
Amen.
Yeah. That's well, I mean, the important thing is that we try to start creating community wherever we are. And in Oklahoma, I don't know, Peyton can relate to this, because we're dealing with a whole lot of, Oklahoma ain't like California. And so it's a tough sell to really get people off of the Woody Guthrie as celebrity to Woody Guthrie as agitator. Okay. It's like, and that's been my fight. And that's probably why I'm not involved with the Woody Guthrie Festival anymore. And, and I'm not, in certain circles, I'm not too welcome about that, because I believe that we have ignored a central part of Woody Guthrie in Oklahoma. I don't think I have here at the Blue Door, but I think overall we have. You can't look at the celebrity. It's going to get us anywhere, because every county in Oklahoma voted for the asshole. Okay.
Speaking to that, back to something you said about the Gandhis, and I meant to read this earlier, just kind of a Dave comment or statement at the end of that Celebrity Skin. It says, our songs remain powerful tools, even in times of disorganization and frustration like the present, which he wrote in 1999, by the way. Yeah. But it fits. They are vehicles we can use to share our opinions, attitudes, hopes, and fears. Most of all, they are the vehicles by which we transmit our shared dreams of what is possible. And that, talking about your mural, Ernie, I think that fits in there. This land is your land, Greg. The dream of everybody feeling empowered and eating. I think it speaks very, very directly to that, and that our songs remain a powerful tool and a vehicle. They are not the answer, like you were saying, Greg. We're not the answer. We are, the answer is within all of us collectively. Till we're all together, we ain't all together.
Amen.
Right on.
Danny?
Yeah, well, we have a larger, more global question. I kind of like to, if we could start this with Bill, since this will be the end of this, but what, you from the very beginning, and all of you've done this in different ways, but you went to musicians to work on these ideas. What do you think it is about music that sort of naturally calls upon us to reach out to the community and build in the community. You have any thoughts about that, Bill?
Yeah, over the years, I've interviewed dozens and dozens of musicians. And interestingly, when I have had very long conversations with Dave, as I'm sure you guys have as well, sometimes going for an hour or 2 hours on the phone when we couldn't see each other. And musicians would come up over and over again. And it seems to me that Dave was able to touch that part of the conscience of musicians in ways that other people haven't. And I think it's important to know that, that when you got to talk to Dave, you're not going to just talk about music. You can certainly do that, but he's going to be able to connect you with so many of the other issues that relate to the problems of our society. So I think Dave has played a major role in bringing not only musicians together, but musicians with social activists. And that's why we're all here today. And he continues to do that. And even when, like, I haven't seen Dave now since the COVID, we would always get together, but I haven't seen him in a long time. And the way we've kept in touch is with these long conversations. And he manages in those conversations to connect you with all kinds of people all over the country, sometimes all over the world, that you don't know. I mean, he's just amazing, all the people that he knows and the connections that he has. But it all has to do with music, and it has to do with building community, and it has to do with economic and social and racial justice. And man, that's a great place to be.
Yeah. Amen.
Well, Dave allowed us to, he always, to me, said, we just have to be who we are and find
Sure.
find your own voice and do your thing. And, you can't, nobody's going to be the same and nobody's going to have the same work. And I think that's what I get from every time I talk to Dave and been around him and been on, a couple of panels and those kind of things. It's all about, finding your voice, letting that voice out there and telling the world about it. And it's just been a wonderful journey. And I'm just glad to be a part of his life, so.
I would like to add that, it's amazing that music is like this vibration that covers us, man. It's like our soul blanket, you know what I mean? It covers us, and I feel that musicians, God just put a couple extra drops of that in us, you know what I mean? And we roll, and we're covering people, man. It's just a vibration of music, man. It's our cover, that's the only way I can put it.
That's well put.
Cool.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to close. This has been a terrific discussion, and it kind of sets the stage for the other two panels we're having today on music and activism. One that Danny is moderating is going to focus on race and class. One that Susan Martinez is moderating is going to focus on health and justice. So thank you to all of you for this great discussion. Thanks to our attendees, and we hope to see at least some of you again in, I think it's an hour and a half. I'm losing track of time, but hopefully I'll remember when to log back in. Thanks again, y'all.
All right.